Touchdown, Wesley!
A chance for the Chargers, and they score!
In the front, Fuzzy again!
Good afternoon and welcome to Fiore Calls Game here on 321 Media, brought to you by CC O'Brien. Some of the best burgers in town, right over there in Pawcatuck, Connecticut. We are right over the river here downtown, and I've got my regular co-host here, Brandon the Con Man Con. How we doing?
What's going on, Fiore? Happy to be here.
Of course, and Kyle Reel joining us from lovely Worcester. How are you doing, Kyle?
I'm all right, man. Still dealing with technical difficulties, but it'll be all right.
I feel you, but we've got a special guest here today, somebody near and dear to the three of us, and we can't wait to introduce him to our viewers. It's Keith LaBelle. He has many titles at the University of Rhode Island. He's the Deputy Title IX Coordinator. He created the iStand program, and he taught us all in PRS 370, a sports branding class, as well as being a former D1 baseball player and many other experiences. Keith, how are you doing?
What's up, boys? I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
We have no pressure for grades here. Being out of college, we are off the books, so it's just gonna be some casual talk here. But tell our viewers here a little about what you do, and because those I just listed a bunch of roles. Not everybody may know what those roles are, but give our audience a little rundown here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I wear a few hats here on campus in Kingston. My office is in athletics, and my main job is with the Title IX office. I handle all the education for Title IX. I give presentations, workshops, teach classes about sexual violence and how to prevent it. Part of that, like you said, I founded and run the iStand program, which is a group comprised of students run by students. I kind of pick the best and brightest from my classes to join this group for internship credit. And they give peer-to-peer presentations around campus and just sort of spread the word, correcting misperceptions about the epidemic of sexual violence and what it looks like in real life, because we know that that's pretty different than what it's depicted as or portrayed by the media or depicted as in the movies. And then I'm a part-time faculty member. So along with supervising internships, and teaching classes on sexual violence prevention, I've had the opportunity to teach a bunch of classes in the Harrington School of Communication and work with the new sports media and communication department in teaching those aforementioned public relations classes, the big one being 370, the sports branding class. And I had the opportunity also to teach PRS 360, strategic sports communication. So it's a good blend of my past as a D1 athlete and kind of my current role here on campus.
How do you go about making sure that these college-age students understand the severity of the topics you discuss in class?
Yeah, I think it's just making it relatable, right? And it's meeting students where they're at. The more doses I can give to students, especially from their peers, the better. And, you know, I think that education is a conversation, and it's all about just kind of introducing the topic to them and how it relates to their lives, kind of correcting those misperceptions that are portrayed by the media and depicted in movies, like I said. And the more often we can hit people with those sort of micro doses of education, the better, and the more kind of aha moments they get. Kind of meeting them where they're at, whether it be on social media, at athletic games. A lot of it is branding. A lot of it is marketing our program. But it's not like a one-time, one-and-done presentation is going to change anybody's mind. It's really getting students into a semester-long discussion about these topics, having them do their own research and kind of look into the things that I talk about in class on their own and do some of their own research. And then people discover, yeah, you know, the way the media rolls it out isn't exactly how it happens right here on campus.
And one of the, I guess one of the things you hang your hat on as a professor and as a mentor to these students is your relationship with the class. I found, and I'm sure Con and Real can back me up on this, that your classes become units unlike any other class. They become teams, really. and you form relationships with the class as a whole and individual students. How do you go about doing that and fostering that different type of climate in the classroom?
Yeah, I think that's well said. That's exactly how I try to facilitate my classes. I try to run it like a team, right? And I try to identify the leaders early on and sort of make them the captains. I love having TAs in my class because it gives me some built-in validity. It gives that line of communication with the students, but just sort of motivating students and treating them as equals. We're all in it together. I feel like a lot of professors in the classes that I took here anyways, there was sort of an adversarial relationship with students. And I tried to get students to have a good return on their investment, and talk about, looking at class as an opportunity to add tools to your toolbox and identify skills that maybe you didn't even know that you had, or work on those skills that you do have, and sort of fostering that team culture and identity. You need buy-in, right? I've certainly taught a lot of classes where I haven't had the buy-in fully, but I've been really fortunate, especially in the sports media classes over the last 5 semesters, to have students that have really bought in and contributed to the team culture in a positive way. And it just makes it fruitful for, I think, everybody involved. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think.
No, I can definitely attest to that. I mean, I think, I'd be saying or repeating a lot of the same stuff I've kind of said when I talk about the class to begin with, but definitely the most fruitful class I've ever had. And it did move like a family, like a unit, you know what I mean? We're all kind of on the same page when it came to doing activities or, whatever it came, whenever it, I guess like assignments came up, you know what I mean? Like, even if it came to moving something, like you'd ask the class, like, what day do you think works? And then if it worked with everybody, it's probably better that we go in that direction. And I think that building the relationship with students, it's clear that you want us to see you more of like a peer instead of, obviously, you are the teacher, you make the grades, but see you more of like a peer and someone that we can talk to instead of like, someone who waves the gavel and is scary. Like, yeah, maybe the first day felt like that or the first couple of weeks, but once you get, we got into the groove of it, it felt really natural and like it was more than just a class. So I guess that wasn't really a question, but I guess to answer you saying, what do we think about it? I could go on forever, but yeah. Appreciate you.
To add on a little bit there, I mean, I don't know if you guys touched upon it. Sorry, doorbell rang. I had to go grab it. It's unlike any class into where like you have to know everybody's name to be able to get by. The amount of group work and the amount of collaboration required to succeed in this class. Like as a TA, we want to be able to know everybody's names like within the first week or two. And you can't say that about literally any other class on campus. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, I agree with that point about needing to know everybody's names. It's gotten to the point. I talked to former TAs and they've seen all the classes for 370 in particular, and they'll be like, "Oh, remember this unit? Yeah, how do you think this unit compares to this one? Oh, this one had this person, this person. Oh, it's so stacked." I don't see anybody ever talking that way about any other class on campus. There's maybe like one class I've taken in my entire school career that had the type of culture that this class had, and it really helps you network because you keep in touch with those people, even at your own level. You see what they're doing. From my class, Connor Calden is going to be working with the Orioles. He actually is already down there in Baltimore. I can think of all the names of kids and what they're doing right now. It's phenomenal. And Con, you were in there with me. We had a special unit there, and you remember those connections. And Keith, what you do to form those connections is you have a setup of activities that you do throughout the semester, and you've placed them strategically at different points. Can you run that down for us, what your model is for 370?
Yeah, I mean, I think the model, honestly, is just connecting to the students, right? And making education, like Kyle said, a conversation with the students and getting feedback and honestly allowing students to facilitate kind of the way the class goes. I do have sort of a, everybody knows by now the broken card game and some sort of off the wall activities for icebreakers up front, but everybody has to learn each other's name. And I think networking is important. And I think, we've gotten so caught up on grades in our country and on taking tests and, remembering things for an exam that I think we lose sight of the fact that we're really trying to learn stuff and add value to our own brands and our own resumes and, just develop new skills and hone our talents. And it doesn't really matter what grade you get as long as you put in effort. So we talk a lot about the gas factor, and we come up with sort of our own vernacular that we've branded throughout these 370 classes. And I think that in and of itself helps to separate these classes from others, things like gas factor and, you can't not communicate, and some of the ground rules that we have. And I always try to start with being as interactive as possible. I make it pretty clear up front, we're going to treat this class like a family, like a team. My door is always open. My phone is always on. Feel free to communicate with me like you would communicate with a family member or a coach. But I also demand accountability, and I make that pretty clear up front. I always say availability is the best ability, right? You got to be there in order to learn anything, and you can't just skip this class. So short of having an emergency or being sick or having a flat tire or something like that, you better be in class. And without giving away too many of my secrets for future students, I think it's worked pretty well to run them through the broken card game and things like the brand draft and some of the things that we've been able to develop and brand. But I honestly couldn't do it without the TAs that have come before me and really helped to build this class, starting with Donato Crisanti, former football player here at URI. He was the original TA. He helped me build the syllabus. I literally found out like 2 weeks before the semester started that I was going to be teaching the class, and he helped me put together a lot of the work that we do, the exercises that we do. He helped me put together the syllabus. And then a guy by the name of Sean Gibbs was one of my original TAs. And then obviously Dave Fleck and Alex D'Amato have been by my side since the very beginning. BK was a TA for both of my classes this semester. And I think that really helps to bridge the gap between students, and it helps to create that team atmosphere, because they're sort of like assistant coaches in the classroom.
And Donato is currently with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if I saw correctly.
He is, yeah.
Great on him. A lot of the students that you've taught have gone on to do great things, and something you do well is getting those former students to return to the class. It's like you have a gallery in the back from when I was there of former students watching. How important is that to you to have former students continue to buy in after the class?
Yeah, I think it's essential. Like I said, it gives me validity. This classes have gotten sort of a reputation around campus, and, people are comparing one semester to another. And I love that when people talk about the classes in a positive way. But the TAs really are the focal point in that, and having, guys like Cam Isimone come back and guest lecture every semester. Emily Ledger, having Bella Kelly now next semester TA with me, that just creates validity for me, and it creates buy-in from the students. And having, a diverse group of TAs, I think is pretty important. Having Tim Crane on the men's hockey team next semester will be huge to create buy-in and just to reach different audiences around campus, to kind of spread the word about the good things that we're doing in these classes.
Tim and Cam have both. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I was gonna say, this is kind of unrelated, but I remember we talked about it in class a little bit, and I wanted to get like a deeper perspective. And I remember one time we were talking about how you were like, I think your generation gets a bad rap. Like, I agree that like a lot of the time I think that people think of us as lazy and don't want to work hard and stuff like that. And I think that that there's reasons for that, and there are people who are that way. But I think that, if you just looked at our class, you could see how dedicated people are, how hardworking the kids are. And I just want to see what you think, like, you've been working with students for a long time, I guess, like how you've seen, I guess, how students have changed in that way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think, it's on me to create that accountability. And I think when I was in school, professors said the same thing. Oh, this generation, kids these days kind of thing. But it's on coaches, it's on professors, it's on parents to hold students and people accountable. And I think respect is a two-way street, and I don't think respect has to be earned. I'm going to respect everybody off the jump until you do something to lose my respect, right? But I think it's just a matter of holding people accountable. And certainly the type of student is a little bit different than they were 15 years ago. And I've been here close to 25 years now. So I was here before cell phones really existed largely, and before social media existed. So there was a lot more interpersonal communication, face-to-face conversations. There were a lot more students who were super involved after campus because There wasn't a phone to kind of bury their head in and look at social media and see what everybody else was doing. You kind of had to go and do it. And that has changed a little bit. So it's a little bit more challenging, but I think it's honestly, it's got its pros and cons, right? I think we can meet and affect and impact more students with technology. But again, I think it all comes down to accountability and just holding people accountable. And there are superstars, you know, like Nando and Cam and Connor DeRosa and Noah, Josh Paiva, you know, Andrew Fiore right there. There are superstars like that today, and just like there were 15, 20 years ago.
How has AI changed how you go about teaching?
It's a pain in the ass. You know, I think it's just an easy out for students who are stressed out and who didn't get to their assignments, just to kind of look something up on AI. And look, AI is not going anywhere. And it's a tool. I was using it the other day for orientation. And it should be used as a tool, but it shouldn't be used as a crutch. You know, what drives me crazy is people who just try to take the easy way out and try to skip improving themselves and getting those reps to better themselves just by using AI and cutting and pasting something. If you truly don't understand something, yeah, use AI to try to understand it better. But then, you know, none of the prompts that I ask are, you know, what is branding? It's mostly, what do you think about it? What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? How would you incorporate this into your own life? So I want people's unique perspectives, and I want them to relate to the content in any of my classes, whether it be sexual violence prevention or strategic sports communication. I want them to relate it to their own lives, because that's the only way they're going to get something out of it. And if you use AI as a crutch, nobody's going to get anything out of it. And I've certainly had students, you know, every semester that try to take the easy way out and use AI. And it's so painfully and blatantly obvious when people use AI. You know, and I basically have a 2-strike policy. The first time they use it, they get a 0 on the assignment and get warned. And then the second time I report them to the dean's office. But AI is not going anywhere. I just think, you know, we need to ask less of book report type assignments and more of, how does this relate to you? How is it going to impact your life? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel the exact same way, especially when it comes to, like, that's why I love I know everyone always talks about the discussions and how they could be a bit of a pain, but I personally used to love to write them, because I mean, I would end up writing way over the word limit because you're asking me about stuff that I like talking about. So it's super easy for me to give my personal answer. And I remember even making this point in class, but it's like, I would never, you know, want a robot to speak for me on something that I know I have a great opinion on, and an opinion that should be shared. And that's how it should be for most students. Like, and I do agree that there should be less book report things that are going to just completely take the, I guess, creativity out of the student. But, you know, some of those can be expected. But you also, you know, you should do the work and you should be there to learn, because what are you wasting your money on if you're just going to have a robot speak for you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I think BK can tell you better than anybody. We're not looking for busy work. We really want people to be creative, right? And practice giving their own opinions, because that's what life is going to be like. People are going to ask you your opinion on a variety of topics, and getting reps doing that, writing, speaking, whatever, it's only going to help you in the future, you know, and the more you do it, the better you are at it. And I think, you know, we all hate discussions, myself included, while we're in it during the semester. But as you look back and reflect upon it, you know, it was hard. It was difficult. No question, but it shouldn't have felt like work. Hopefully, you know, hopefully it was something that really benefited people and helped to improve their overall communication skills, whether it be writing or speaking.
AI cannot write an opinion, and that's not a fact. That's my opinion. But you know, there is no human voice in AI, and like Keith said, it is painfully obvious sometimes when students use it. And like you said, yeah, the prompts require your own thoughts, your own opinions, and AI absolutely cannot provide that for you. So I like the way that you said it. Use it as a tool, not a crutch. You lean on that crutch too much, the crutch falls over. So and then there's just no creativity anymore, no opinions, and a robot really can't have an opinion. So that's, you know, if you're going to use it, sure. Like he said, we'll warn you if it's painful, if you're copying and pasting, because where does copyright and just completely I'm forgetting the word here, but
Plagiarized.
yeah, plagiarism. Thank you. There's a borderline between brainstorming and plagiarizing. People just taking right from AI. It's just it should be something that's looked at as morally incorrect. You would think people have morals to not plagiarize, especially for something that really you can't get in trouble for outside of school. So yeah, just take AI use with a grain of salt and make sure you know what you're doing. You can't voice an opinion with AI.
How do
Totally.
you
And
think educators
Fiore,
are-
just to hold on, sorry, Fiore, just to close the loop on that, I had a student, and the midterm in 370, it's an NIL pitch, and you have to kind of match your brand to an organization, a company, a sports club that you think is a good fit for you and your brand and your personality. And I had a kid who was writing about his own personal brand using 100% AI. The entire paper midterm was AI. And it's like, what are you learning about yourself? Like, what are you getting out of that when you have a robot write about, how hardworking you are, the leadership abilities that you have? And it's just crazy. Sorry to cut you off, Kyle.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I can imagine this is. I mean, I don't want to go too long about AI, but I can imagine this is going to be a problem for educators going forward on all levels. So I'm just wondering, like, how you think educators are going to deal with that, because it's going to be everywhere and it's only probably going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of educators sort of let it slide, and they just kind of put in the bare minimum work and just say, all right, you did the assignment, it's a check mark, 10 out of 10, and kind of move on. But I just feel like, again, that lack of accountability is just doing students such a huge disservice, because people just kind of slide by, and then when they're going to be asked to create something or even asked to interview, they're going to be stuttering and stammering and not going to be able to communicate about their own personal brand and who they are and their character, their reputation, what they're all about, because they've just leaned on AI for so long. I do backflips and somersaults at the beginning of the semester. I say, just please do not use AI in my classes. To me, that's the worst thing you can do. It's the biggest disrespect to me and to the rest of the class and their teammates by just mailing it in and using AI.
Con, what is it like being a TA for Keith?
Oh man. Well, it really puts it into perspective. I think every TA will say this. They enjoy going through the class again as a TA, because it is such a different perspective, and you get to learn so much about mostly new people. Obviously, I knew Kyle going into being one of his TAs for 370 this year, but you make so many new connections, and it's nice being able to, instead of AI being a crutch, being a crutch for those students who need help. You've been through the ringer once or twice, because maybe as a TA you've taken both classes or one or the other, but still it's so nice being an outlet for so many people. And when you ask me, like, that's such a difficult question, because I don't know, it just all culminates like so many different emotions and so many different it's very rewarding. And Keith will say it's probably harder than taking the class, even though we're not the ones writing the 2 weekly discussions. It's you get out of it what you put in. It's just because we're TAs doesn't mean we're better than everyone. We have to work just as hard as everybody in that class to be able to succeed. And it's more than just getting credits for it. Like Keith said, I sat in on 360. Like I didn't have to, but just because of the rewarding feeling and being able to make so many new connections, it was too good to pass up. Ultimately, one word is rewarding. That's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, it's difficult. I would say it's difficult because, think about the work that you had to do for my class and then multiply it by 25. And that's what the TAs have to do. And obviously, the more TAs, the more kind of chopped up it is. But you definitely get 25 different people's perspectives on every prompt. And you figure out, you can see 25 different people and their responses to, a question about how, their brand fits a certain corporate culture and, their different takes on a resume, a LinkedIn page, an NIL pitch, whatever it might be. So it's rewarding. I think you learn a lot more by teaching. but it's definitely difficult. And I give my TAs a lot of props, a lot of credit. People like BK who did both, people like Chris Ward who TA'd 3 or 4 different classes for me, Connor DeRosa, and of course Alex and Dave. I can't say enough about those 2 guys. They were with me since day one of these classes.
You said you can. Oh, go ahead, Kyle.
I was gonna say, well, speaking of rewarding, I kind of wanted to move over to iStand. Like, how rewarding is it to you to know the impact that is made on campus and just all over college campuses in general? Like, when I see the iStand sticker on someone's car, like I just get like, I'm like, yeah, like because I know the people who run it and just how much goes into that and what a big impact that's making, because it's also something I'm super passionate about. I wish I was around longer. You know what I mean? I wish I didn't get introduced to you in like my last semester of school. It's unfortunate, but what you do with that program is really good. And I want to see how rewarding it feels to you, and how it must feel for the students who are involved in it too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think rewarding is the right word for it. Nobody gets into higher ed for the paycheck for the most part, unless you're a hoops coach. You don't get into it for the paycheck. But it is really rewarding just to see the hard work over 20 years kind of pay off, and see other students kind of giving these presentations and teaching the content in the same way that I taught it to them, and sort of just creating this ripple effect, like throwing a stone in a pond and seeing the ripples spread. And that's the way I think to spread education, because it's an epidemic that a lot of people have misperceptions about, but it's not going to be solved with like the police or with laws or with putting people in jail. Like, these cases are so hard to prove. It's like trying to end racism with laws. You're not going to solve racism with laws. It's up to people to hold others accountable and speak up and stand up and, say that's not all right, and I'm not going to accept this in my community. And, I feel the same way when I see the iStand sticker. My wife called me the other day, was driving home from Boston and saw the iStand sticker on the highway. She was like, I just saw one of your stickers. And, I love that so much. I love that we've been able to spread our message. And to a large extent, spread it to different campuses. I spoke last month at Long Island University to 120 people. And the woman who hired me was like, oh, good luck. This is a tough campus. This is a tough crowd. These students are not mandated or required to go to anything. They basically just need to show up, and then they can come and go as they please. And they usually walk out after like half hour. And I spoke for 90 minutes, and I think like 4 people left. And I got like a standing O after, but so many people came up to me and was like, that really changed my perspective. Like, I really have never thought about sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, video voyeurism in that way before. And keep doing what you're doing, kind of thing. So it's really rewarding. Having the opportunity to speak to the NFL was pretty awesome. It was pretty cool to go to Foxborough Stadium or go to Gillette, in Foxborough, and speak in the film room every fall. That was pretty cool and pretty rewarding. And being a member of the NCAA Speakers Bureau, speaking at University of Minnesota, University of Wyoming, speaking at all the schools pretty much in the Northeast, Harvard, Yale, PC, Brown, Bryant, Roger Williams, UMass Dartmouth. It's been pretty cool, and certainly not a career that I would have envisioned for myself 25 years ago when I was here as an undergrad playing baseball, but one that's been really rewarding and really beneficial because I've been able to help a lot of people, which is pretty cool to say.
I'm going to flip the table on you, Keith, and make you do something you've made all of your students do. But can you give us an elevator pitch for joining iStand and what exactly iStand does? I know you just covered a lot of it, but like for our listeners out there, what are the basics of iStand?
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, so basically, I'm going to rewind about 25 years, almost to the date. And I was a senior. I was the captain of the baseball team here, and that's sort of all I thought I was good at. Right. I was a pretty good writer and a good speaker. I was a communications major, but I'm not a handy guy. I can't change my oil. I don't love manual labor. I'm not great at sales. So I really had no idea what I was going to do with my career. And I felt like many seniors do. I was sort of lost. And my second semester, senior year, there was a program that was started that's actually still at URI today. It's now SAC. It was called RAM Choices. It stood for Responsible Alcohol Management for Athletes. And every Thursday, we met right here in Keene in one of those upstairs classrooms. I think it's now the football offensive line film room now. But we met in that classroom in Keene. I think it was 210. And we discussed, topics for college students, nutrition and study habits and substance abuse issues and mental health issues. And one of the topics we covered was dating, domestic violence, and sexual assault. And the guy who ran the program came up to me after one of the meetings and said, "Hey, Keith, what are you doing next year?" And I was like, "Dan, I have no idea. I'm a ball player. I'm trying to play a little bit more ball, seeing what happens." And he was like, "Well, what would you think about grad school?" It's like, I've been here for 4 years. I don't know, man. I'm kind of schooled out. I'm done with school. I've been a double major. I have a 3.6 GPA. I'm done. I just want to kind of make some money and start my career. He was like, "Well, what's that career going to be?" Like, I have no idea. He's like, "Why don't you think about grad school?" He was like, "We just got a grant from the Department of Justice. It was a federal grant called the VAWA grant, the Violence Against Women Act grant, originally authored by Joe Biden back in like the 70s, I believe." And he said, "Why don't you come in here and run that grant?" And I was like, "Well, what would that look like?" And he said, "Well, you'd have to teach a class on sexual violence prevention. You'd have to start a peer-to-peer education group, and you'd have to provide education to all first-year students, either at URI 101, at orientation, hopefully both." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I can give a good presentation." But I was like, "Listen, it's a great opportunity. Let me think about it." And I did a little bit of research, and it was a $300,000 grant to combat violent crimes against women. And I had a few more conversations with Dan, and I said, "That's awesome that URI got this grant." I was like, "But, I've been here for the last 4 years, been to my fair share of parties and, been to Bonneview on Thursday nights and Coast Guard House on Saturday nights and been down the line at Ponchos and in Eastwood Look and in Bonnet. And I've never really heard of sexual assault happening. I've never really heard of dating and domestic violence. Am I really going to make that big of a difference? And I understand I'll have free grad school and I'll have this assistantship, but how much are people really going to be impacted by this program?" I was like, "Listen, Dan, I have an opportunity to go play professional ball overseas in Austria." So I was offered a pro baseball contract in Austria, and I don't think it's very good baseball, but it was making like $200 a game to go over and be like a player coach in Austria, which, again, I don't think the baseball in Austria is very good, but I was really thinking about it. And I sat and I talked with my parents about it, and my dad said, "Keith, they can never take an education away from you." He was like, "You can play baseball forever." He was like, "You're probably not going to the major leagues." He was like, take the offer, take the assistantship." So I did. And the whole first year, I basically had to get trained and go to these conferences and be educated on sexual assault, the data, the facts, the stats, what to say, how to present it in a trauma-informed way. And, so the next fall, I started as a grad assistant, and I, started grad school. And I'll never forget the very first presentation I gave. It was one of those hot September days. It was a beautiful, 90-degree day. It was in Browning Hall. It was the 2 different sections of URI 101. And I knew my stuff, and I knew I was a really good presenter, and I nailed this presentation, right? I had people engaged, and they were interactive, and people were laughing, and they were quiet, and they were kind of locked in the whole time. And I gave this presentation, and after the presentation, 4 women waited around, and they came up to me, and they said, "Hey, can I talk to you? That happened to me. That happened to me already within the first 2 weeks." And it became very real to me very, very quickly. I couldn't believe that students wanted my help. I didn't think it would impact as many people as it has. And it just kind of really changed my perspective. And that's what I mean when I say you can't really truly educate somebody from a half-hour presentation or an hour-long training. You really have to live it. And it's one of those topics where you don't get it until it's really impacted you or your life personally. And, listen, it didn't really impact my life personally, but here were these 4 women who wanted my help and wanted to share these horrible, traumatic things that had happened to them. And I just started to realize, I can make a difference doing this. Like, I knew all the athletes here, and they all wanted to take a class with me because they were my friend, and they knew it was going to be a pretty easy class. Which it wasn't, but, and I had the opportunity to start something from kind of the grassroots level where It was a rewarding experience, and I had the ability to educate people and impact lives. And I found out very quickly that it shouldn't just be one person's voice spreading this education. It needs to be everybody's voice. So long story short, I finished out my grant requirements. I got my master's degree here. And by the time I graduated, we had created a nationally recognized peer education program for sexual violence prevention. Those conferences that I had gone to my first year, we were now the keynotes at how to create a successful peer advocacy program doing sexual violence prevention work. And one of my workshops I titled Cops, Jocks, and Frat Guys, Training and Working with Stereotypically Difficult Audiences. And the whole crux of my presentation was that cops, jocks, and frat guys are not difficult audiences. They're actually mostly good dudes, and they want to help, and they just need to be educated about this stuff. But I had real success working with athletes, especially. I had like three of the starting five on the men's hoops team, including Kahim Seawright, Jimmy Barron, as peer advocates, spreading educational messages. I had the quarterback of the football team, and I grew my program like that. And people were like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to get involved. I want to take this class. I want to put something on my resume that is more than how fast can I run the 40 or what's my free throw percentage. And, over the last 15 or 20 years, I've had 350 all-time interns who have worked with me. And to a person, they say that the number one thing they get asked about when they graduate on their resume is, what's the sexual violence prevention work that you do? Because plenty of people are on athletic teams, plenty of people join Greek life, but not a lot of people do something as emotionally charged and, sensitive as giving education about sexual violence prevention. And having the opportunity to work with survivors of sexual violence has been really eye-opening. It's hard work. It's difficult emotionally, but it's really rewarding work for the most part. It can be frustrating at times, but it's something that I am really, really passionate about. And like I said, 25 years ago, I never would have thought that I'd be here doing this work, or I knew nothing, literally nothing about sexual violence 25 years ago. And now it's my career. And I've been a member of the NCAA Speakers Bureau, and I spoke to the NFL, and, but I think I'm most proud of the number of people who have, volunteered to take my class, applied to intern with me, and then gone on to make a difference in their own lives. Because I'm not going to make a difference, but if I educate 25 people every semester, those 25 people are going to make a hell of a lot more of a difference than I am. So it's sort of the philosophy that I teach in my 370 classes of, that accountability and that gas factor, but really helping and combating a social justice issue that, like I said, laws are not going to solve. Police are not going to stop sexual violence. The courts are not going to adjudicate domestic violence properly. The media is not going to educate us on domestic violence or sexual assault. It's up to us to kind of take responsibility for educating ourselves and spread that education as far and wide as we can. So I'm sort of like a coach, a little bit like a role model in that way in my day-to-day life. And it's been really, really rewarding work.
That's the type of work that makes a real difference, and we appreciate it so much. And I'm sure that you've touched so many lives through that work. It's really powerful to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah. So sort of probably went over my 5-minute time limit for my elevator pitch, but what'd you think? What grade would you give me?
A+. Not that grades are what determines things, as you've taught us, but A+ for sure.
That's right.
He throws in VACOG and everything, man.
VACOG, the whole thing.
Practice what you preach, man. That wasn't my only takeaway, obviously. I've heard that story at least 3 or 4 times now, and it's just, I don't know, you find ways to add substance to it every single time. I didn't even remember about your offer to be a player coach in Austria. I think that might have been a new detail for the story there. But yeah, man, I mean, your story just embodies everything that your classes teach, and the work that you do outside the classes. Like it's absolutely incredible. It's incredibly inspiring, and I mean, you already know that you're an awesome dude. So it goes to show that you can give a kick-ass presentation and story too. I mean, locked in the entire time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I personally learned a lot about giving presentations and public speaking, more than I ever have in any class that I've ever taken. I was beyond scared about that aspect of it. And I think one of the things that the class was really big for me and a lot of other people, I think, was kind of realizing potential that maybe a lot of us didn't see before. I mean, I don't really have a question that's going to come out of this, but I guess just like one thing I noticed was how many people that maybe didn't know exactly what direction that they were going to go in. Even, the seniors who, you're about to graduate, we don't know exactly, but a lot of people got stuff out of that class where it felt like, we had stuff to kind of put in the toolbox that we know how to do, that, we gained a lot of skills and experience and stuff that we know that we're able to show in an interview and whatever it may be that is going to help us later on. So I guess that's like probably my biggest takeaway. And I remember I walked out of class on our last day and I was like, I've never said in my life that I'm going to miss a class, but I'm genuinely going to miss coming to this class.
I feel the same way. It's funny, even every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm like, I'd be going to 370 right now. And it was a busy semester. I taught 5 classes, but I miss that one in particular. It was a great group. That's a really rewarding experience too, and in a little bit of a different way. Because I think, like you said, Kyle, like the skills that we teach there, it's not going to maybe land you your career or point you in the exact direction that you want to go in, but hopefully it's transferable skills that you'll have for the rest of your life. And I always say, you can't not communicate, and hopefully those public speaking skills will help, in relationships, conversations with employers, interview skills, whatever in your whole life. I hope that people will use some of the stuff that we worked on in that class.
Yeah. I kind of want to transition here, unless you had another question, Fiore.
I did on the iStand topic really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
For any of our listeners who know anybody or have experienced anything under the iStand umbrella, like domestic abuse, anything like that, how do you go about talking to them, and what do you recommend saying to them, or how do you want people to handle those situations and talk to the loved ones in their lives who have experienced those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's not a one kind of pat answer to that. I think first and foremost, just recognize that it happens, and believe whoever tells you. I think the media has shown us over time that people, these keyboard warriors, they just doubt the credibility and validity of anybody's story, but who has a vested interest to make any of this stuff up? So believe people, and then just let them know that it wasn't their fault. I think for the most part, people who have experienced something bad that happens, they talk about, well, what did I do wrong? What could I do differently next time? I talk often in my presentations about the just world phenomenon. And it's the psychological theory that the world is a fair and just place and good things happen to good people. And if something bad happens to me, well, I must have done something bad to deserve it. But alcohol doesn't cause sexual assaults, and jealousy doesn't cause domestic violence. It's a choice that predators make, that offenders make. And, just tell somebody that it wasn't their fault, believe them, and just support them, and, avoid taking control, sort of let them make the decision. When somebody has been violated sexually in that way, they've had the power and control taken away from them. The word rape stems from the Latin word rapier, which literally means to steal, to seize, or to take away. And when somebody has been violated either sexually or physically or emotionally, it's important just to give them the power back. And, a good question is, how can I help? What can I do? And just be there and just follow somebody's lead. And, especially with relationship violence. And I've found that there are more and more cases of dating and domestic violence happening, and people don't even realize that it's domestic violence because it's not yet physical. The newspaper, the media, even, Netflix shows like the Gabby Petito documentary or the O.J. Simpson. They only depict physical violence, and they only depict kind of the last step in the domestic violence cycle, and that's to kill somebody, right? But they don't depict like how it starts and the subtle put downs and the control and telling somebody what to do and where to go and who they're allowed to talk to. And that's where it really starts, all those red flags. So sort of educating people what those red flags look like and letting people know, hey, that wasn't your fault. How can I help? What can I do? And remaining patient. People, especially in abusive relationships, they typically leave between 7 and 11 times before they leave for good. They break up and go back and break up and go back, often because, one, they're afraid to leave their partner, and two, they know that their partner's not going to let them leave. And they're often stalked after. But it doesn't look like it looks on TV. It happens in much more subtle ways than that. So I think believing people, supporting them, and asking how they can help is, the most important start to helping somebody go from being a victim to becoming a survivor.
It's very well said. So kind of transitioning a little bit into what I wanted to ask. So you mentioned people can apply to be iStand interns. Like you really love to get your former students involved. Me myself as a TA this past semester. What are qualities that you look for in somebody? What do people have to do to become a TA, become an iStand intern, other than just expressing interest? Because we know all too well that you can express interest and then we find out you used AI and you're off the table. What qualities are we looking for?
So I don't think it's one thing. Obviously they have to have those intangibles that we talk about in class, that gas factor. They need to really care. They need to, be accountable. They need to show up every day and work hard. And, people are going to make mistakes. People are going to screw up, and that's okay, as long as they learn from their mistakes. And, I think you grow most from failure. But it's people who take the time and the initiative to have a relationship with me outside of kind of the student teacher relationship, kind of dab me up when they come into class, fist bump me on the way out, hey, say hello. It's people who develop that, that relationship that we talked about earlier with me, and they make the effort to really have that relationship. And it's people that I want to work with. I want to come to work and see every single day. And that's not always just people who work hard. I think there's a variety of factors and qualities that I look for. And, listen, you never know really how somebody's going to be just from their performance in class. But I think people who care, people who care about other people too. I could have the best student in class, but if they didn't care about their classmates, I don't want them as a TA. So people who give good feedback, who are respectful, who are courteous, who are polite, who are empathetic, all the sort of bricks that we talk about that define and cultivate a good, positive personal brand are the people that I look for in 370 and 360. And then in iStand, obviously people join for a variety of reasons. Some have direct experience with sexual violence. Some people are just interested by the topic. Some people really want to help. So people that get it, and I say get it in quotes, and I can kind of tell. In my iStand class, and I know none of you have taken my iStand class, but I require sort of the same as in 370, a weekly journal every Thursday. And it's sort of an opportunity just to kind of vent about how people are feeling about the topics, where it's confidential. It's only read by me, not even the TAs read it. And I can kind of tell if people get this topic, or if they're still like, oh, well, she shouldn't have got so drunk, or, oh, well, why did she stay with this person who was mean to her? I can kind of I kind of see how most people stop victim blaming, but they have to really get it with iStand, and again, care, develop that relationship with me, all those kind of intangibles.
Yeah, you can go, Andrew. I didn't have anything exactly to add. That answered everything. I wish I got the chance to take the class.
With any of your classes, buy-in is so important. How have you seen students who aren't bought in initially develop into being leaders, or even just having some semblance of investment in it? How do you foster that level of investment in students who originally don't show it?
Yeah, I think those are my biggest wins, honestly. The people who show up and are like, and not kind of bought in for the first quarter of the semester, first few weeks, they're like, not really buying what I'm selling at first, and then kind of turn it around and show the effort. One example is Josh Paiva. Josh Paiva didn't really know what to make of me the first couple of weeks. He was not exactly sure that he was in it to win it. And then he became one of my all-stars, right? And he TA'd the class the next semester, and I still keep in touch with Josh today. But I think a lot of that largely falls on the TAs, to kind of reach out, develop that relationship, because I can be intimidating, and not a lot of students, especially if they're not bought in, really want to talk to me. But the TAs can kind of foster that relationship. Dave Fleck was great at that. Dave would have conversations with people who just weren't bought in, and maybe weren't showing up to class or weren't submitting their homework, and just kind of motivate them, reach out. Hey, is everything all right? What's going on with you? You get out of this class what you put in. So, it's in your best interest to show up and to do more. There's not one way. That everybody's different. And I think that's the beauty of teaching every semester, is even though the content is the same, the class cohort changes and the personalities change, and developing those relationships. I kind of love being that mentor, that coach. You can't coach everybody the same way, right? So some people need to, kind of have their arm put around them, and some people need to be read the riot act a little bit, and kind of figuring that out is really what kind of fills my bucket and motivates me. One of my favorite all-time students, Noah McLean, I kicked him out with the first 2 classes. I was like, get out of here. You didn't do your homework. Go out in the hall. And I knew he was kind of a louder than life personality. Some of the TAs had warned me, he's going to be trouble in the class. He's the kind of kid that shows up with a tank top and cowboy hat. I'm like, I'm not worried about Noah. I'm not worried about anybody. To this, he is one of the iStand members. He's actually doing orientation with me this summer. He's not getting credit anymore. He's not getting paid to do it. He's just doing it as a volunteer. He's one of my favorite students. But, I knew that I could be tough on him and he would respond. And then there were other students that I couldn't really be as tough on. I just needed to kind of call in and be like, hey, is everything all right? What's going on? Are you into this class? Like, how can I make it better? What can I do for you to kind of make you buy in a little bit more? So it's different with everybody. And I love that challenge of kind of motivating everybody a little bit differently.
I love hearing these names. A lot of our closest friends, Dave and Alex, very tight with all of us. And Alex, usually, if Philly gets mentioned, you'll see that paragraph in the comments section. But we love Alex, love Dave. Josh Randall's another star. He's going to be working with the Ocean State Waves. He might even do some stuff here for 321. Been talking to my boss. He's a rock star. And Josh Paiva, I know he's working with RIFC. So many names to think of that developed. And Noah's awesome. Noah's one of the best broadcasters I've called with. I just think it's awesome, the community that you've helped create within all these sports media students that are all trying to do similar things, and they can all work with each other and learn from each other and network and try to find jobs together. Honestly, it's a really, I know, Con, you're doing something with DeRosa, or at least trying to talk to some company that he's at. I know he wanted to. He texted me the second I put up the post yesterday. He's like, I can't wait to watch this. So bought in. I really love those networks that you've really created.
Yeah, it's a great community. And, like I always say, the more successful you guys are, the more successful our program will be. So I'm really rooting for everybody to do well and achieve success and really stay in touch with each other. Because, you never know who's going to be able to open a door for each other 10 years from now. And I hope that everybody does stay in touch. I'd love to organize some kind of alumni event for these classes. That's why I really hope the Rhody Sports Media Club gets off the ground. And, I think Bridget Locke and Nora are going to try to take a shot at it again, along with their women in sports group. And I think that will be really good to continue to sustain that relationship with people who have graduated and moved on, and just create, keep those lines of communication open and create events that everybody can come back and help each other out with.
One of the things you taught in the class was that you will look at sports differently, and even just general life differently in terms of an advertising perspective. And I think that's a good launching point for us to get into the current sports climate. We have our Stanley Cup final matchup set, the Oilers and the Panthers. The Thunder are going into the NBA Finals, which has caused a lot of debate. I want to ask you about SGA. Now, Con, we're in a big, actually, it's a 370 alum chat pretty much, but a lot of debate about SGA and his reputation and things. He just won the MVP award, but his reputation is split between the league trying to put him as the face and people seeing him as a foul baiter. How would you rate his branding, and what would you do if you were him to maybe stop some of the foul baiting identity that's formed around him?
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, I'm not a huge hoops guy. I think, the NBA has kind of gone into this whole culture where there is that foul baiting, which sort of makes it unwatchable for me.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of the Celtics, unfortunately, with the Knicks, and
Right.
I'm sort of a fair weather hoops guy. I don't follow SGA too closely, so I'll kind of let you guys handle that one. My favorite basketball player of all time, well, two, Bird and Jordan, and they were both just killers and assassins. Yeah. And it was just a different style of hoops back then. It was a lot rougher, a lot tougher. I'm more of a hockey baseball guy. I think even baseball's got a little bit soft lately with the pitch counts and everything else, but it's obviously successful, and something about the Celtics run said that shoot every three. And I think somewhere people are still pulling up from like half court shooting threes for the Celtics, even though they're out of it. I'm just out on the whole foul, trying to buy the foul culture.
Then let's get your takes on the Stanley Cup final matchup, because I find it very interesting from a branding perspective. A rematch, Oilers and Panthers, and you have the best player in the sport. You have Florida teams winning the East each of the last 6 years. The NHL, we've talked about in class, has had some branding problems. How big do you think it'd be for the league for McDavid to get a ring? Do you think people are sick of Florida? How do you think the NHL is doing with this?
Yeah, I think the NHL is doing better, especially since you took the class. I think the Four Nations Cup, that was some of the best hockey I've ever seen. Yep. I think it drew a lot more eyeballs. I think, a sustained success in any sport draws either haters or lovers, so people, they're sick of Florida, but they're the model right now. That's the standard, and that brand of hockey is what is successful. And I think they're going to beat Edmonton. I think in 6 games. I hope I'm wrong too, actually. But I think they're going to beat Edmonton. I'd love to see Connor McDavid get a cup, but honestly, my favorite player in that series is Barkov. Barkov is an absolute stud, and I love him on and off the ice. He's such a leader. He's such a competitor. He does all the little things right.
Doesn't grab the headlines.
He doesn't, but he is just kind of one of those quiet guys who is a true professional. He goes about his business the right way. If I had to model my hockey game, it would be after Barkov, and those are some big skates to fill. McDavid is just head and shoulders better than anybody else. Watching him is like, honestly, watching like a man among boys. He is just so fast. He's so big. He handles the puck so well. But we'll see. We'll see if that, at the end of the day, wins, because I think if you shut him down, I don't know that Draisaitl's going to do it on his own, and I think that Florida's going to win.
I think the Stanley Cup is actually great from just a branding perspective, and I agree that the NHL is doing a lot better job lately. I think that the games feel bigger. I feel like the presentation is a lot better, and I think that these two teams, the NHL probably loves that. I know the fans might not love Florida being there 3 times in a row, but the Oilers, it's a historic team for the NHL. They probably love that. They want McDavid there. You know what I mean? This is good from a branding perspective when you look at it.
And I love Edmonton hasn't won in how long since
1990.
1990, I think was the exact year.
Against Boston.
That's right. And the whole La Bamba thing after their wins, I love that. And I'd love to see Edmonton win, but I think Florida has the model, like the brand of hockey they play. And who doesn't love Paul Maurice? I love Paul Maurice. I love the way he wouldn't go out on the ice and be involved in the handshake line. I love that. I think that speaks volumes about him and his personal brands, to be honest with you, and the way he views his players and kind of giving them all the attention, all the limelight, and staying out of the handshake line. I really liked. What's your take on that, Fiore?
I didn't know he did that. I like that. I respect it. It can be interpreted as he won't go he won't go deal with the other team, but it's more of a it's like you said, it's more of letting the players take the limelight, and he's been great at that. You really, when you think of the Panthers, you think of Tkachuk and Barkov and Bennett and all those guys, and now Marchand as well.
I just, as someone who grew up playing hockey, like I look at the Panthers and I'm like, that's a team I would love to play on. You know what I mean? It like
Yeah,
seems like
totally.
they play like a hockey team. Like they're so tough, and they'll do whatever it takes to win the game. And it just seems like they're all so bought into being a team together. And I know I love to hate on them because 2023 that broke my heart,
Yeah.
but like I can't do nothing but respect them because they play a great style of hockey, and it's like what I think about when I think of a hockey team, if that makes any sense.
100%. Yeah, I'd love to play for them too. That locker room just seems like it's so tight knit. They seem like they really like each other. I think Marchand has fit in really, really well. I think it's opened his eyes, and I think it sort of closed the door. If there was even a tiny chance he'd come back to the Bruins, I think it kind of closed the door on that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you go back, that's a good point. I was going to say, I think the Panthers somehow swinging that trade for Marchand really made a difference for them. I think even if they don't have, no disrespect to Marchand, obviously, how you go a couple weeks back or a month or two back when Marchand got traded, how all of us were completely distraught during the Sam Knox episode when that was broken to us live. But it goes to show that I think the Panthers probably would have made the cup without Marchand. Obviously, like I said, we all love Marchand, but it goes to show that a guy like that, how impactful he is. And I'm a very casual hockey fan. I'm not going to pretend to say that I've watched every game of the playoffs, but I think it was pretty obvious that from the Panthers' culture, their talent, even though they weren't technically the best regular season team, that they were going to make a deep run no matter what. And they basically cleared the field. They had a little bit of trouble with Toronto, I believe.
Yes.
But they absolutely cruised through the Eastern Conference Finals. No idea how that Carolina team made it through. They got absolutely demolished. They stole one, but they still, everybody knew it was going to be a sweeper, a gentleman's sweep. And yeah, it sucks that I'm not rooting for the Panthers. I'm rooting for Brad because the Bruins organization really, he was dealt a short hand with the Bruins the last couple of years. So I'm really pulling for him. But then on the other side, you got to pull for McDavid too, and the Oilers. Like we said, they haven't won a cup in 35 years. I mean, that both teams are doing their branding really right, and Florida hockey is just absolutely off the charts right now. So I think it'll be fun. I'm going to try to watch every game of the finals, and yeah, and I don't know. What do you guys think?
Kyle, who are you rooting for?
This is actually really difficult for me because I think, like you said, in my opinion, I think McDavid is the greatest hockey player I've ever seen. Like I didn't watch Gretzky, obviously that was so long ago. I've seen highlights of him, but I always take it with a grain of salt because look at the pads the goalies are wearing. I mean, I love Gretzky, but look at the
different game.
Yeah, look at it's totally different. Not to discredit him at all, because 200 assists in a season is something ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? That's just insane. But I think McDavid's the best hockey player in the world, and I would like to see him get a cup for his legacy. But I also really like Brad Marchand is my favorite hockey player of all time. And as much as I hate that he got traded to the Panthers, I would love to see him win another Stanley Cup. So this one, I almost feel like I can't lose because I'm cool with whoever wins. I just hope it goes I hope it, somebody doesn't go up 3-0 again like last year. Like I hope it's a back and forth series and they go to 7. But I'm not gonna lie, I think I'm gonna have to go with Edmonton. I'm rooting for Edmonton.
I can see that.
But I really like Florida too.
So tough, dude. I don't know. It's so tough.
I'm so petty. This is easy for me, Edmonton. I'm super petty as a sports fan. I'm not over 2023.
Fair, though.
I like Brad, obviously. I love him. I've spoke to him at a press conference. I just got a jersey of him. Actually, it was on sale. But I can't root for Florida after what they did to us. But one thing I think the NHL did really well was the first round. You had those overtime. Well, I mean, it's not that it was planned this way, but those throwing overtime games were marketed very well. And the Rantanen storylines with Dallas, knocking out his former teams, the hat tricks, I think that served the league very well. But I do want to pivot to Rhodey Baseball, your former team. They are playing in the college baseball playoffs for the first time since 2016 tonight against Dallas Baptist. What are your thoughts on them and what they've been able to do in the A10 tourney and now in the NCAAs?
Oh, I'm so proud of those guys. I have a personal relationship with a few of those guys, and they're just good dudes on and off the field. I'm so happy for Raf, all-time winningest Rhodey coach, A10 coach of the year. He was my grad assistant coach my freshman year. So I have a really good personal relationship with Raf, and I'm really proud of all of them. I was actually having a conversation today, this morning, with Paul Whitney, the guy who runs the bookstore. And he came over and he shook my hand and he said, "Congratulations." And I said, on what? And he said, "Well, Rhodey baseball is playing tonight." He's like, "You guys are the reasons that, they have a turf field and have, come so far." And he was like, "If you remember, Keith, 2 years before you guys got here, that team was 2-42 and they were threatened to be cut." He was like, "Your coach was not even a salaried employee at the time. And look at how far they've come." I was like, "Yeah, there's a lot more people other than our class that did that. But, there's a lot of guys who have come in the last 25 years that are really rooting for this team." And, it's the third time, obviously, that they've made it this far. It's the highest seed that they've ever had, one of the best seasons they've ever had. And, I couldn't be happier for this crew in particular. Guys like Tristan Levesque and Ant DePino and DJ Perron, they're just good dudes on and off the field. And I wish them the best success and, the best luck tonight, and I would love for them to steal a series down there and make it to the Super Regionals.
That would be incredible. I know Tristan and Anthony very well. They were with the Schooners, who we talked to the owner of the Schooners last week, but I'd love to have Tristan and Anthony in here. I think they'd be great guests, and I'm going to work on that. But I'm just so happy for those guys. They've been killing it, and I think it's a huge moment for Rhode Island sports. URI football winning the CAA, now Rhode Island baseball, and then you got track and field and the rowing team. It's great time for Rhodey athletics.
Totally.
I was
Totally.
Gonna say the same thing. It's incredible, other than basketball, but that's a whole nother thing. Like the one sport we were mostly pulling for this year, other than football. What a great time for Rhodey sports, man. Baseball team doing great things. Football, hopefully they can keep it up, be consistent. And even other sports like track and field, which we absolutely own. Track and field in the nation right now. Rowing is another great one.
Well, shout out rowing. They're unbelievable. Yeah. They're such studs. It's unbelievable,
and because those aren't the major four sports in the U.S., they really go overlooked. But I'm really proud as a sports media student, like how much our sports teams have grown and how consistently like a lot of our sports teams have been. They've been consistent. They've been really great, and I just think it's something that every student should be proud of. Like we are a very competitive D1 school, and we're really competing out here and becoming one of the bigger sports programs, hopefully in the nation soon, but on the East Coast, I would say, as the flagship university in the smallest state in the country, it's really great to not shout out, "Hey, Rhode Island's still on the map." I really feel I'm very proud of our sports and how we're getting out there as a university.
Yeah, I ran into a couple of my former teammates this weekend, and they said, "What do you think about the team?" And they were like, "Imagine if this team played our team." I said, "Oh, they would smoke us. It wouldn't even be close. They would beat the doors off us. They're so talented. They're so much better now than we were back then. They are a really good team and a really, really good program."
You've said that there's no reason that the URI sports media program can't be like top 5 in the country. What are your thoughts on how this program has grown?
I think it should be number 1 in the country. The access that we have to working directly with these sports and calling games. There's just some really talented students that have come through this program, and the reps that our students are able to get this opportunity that URI has presented for students. There's no reason we're not the number 1 program in the country as it relates to sports journalism and sports communication and sports media in general. We have some really, really talented students. Look at Nando working at ESPN, Bella Kelly with the content creation, Pad working for the Connecticut Sun, Cam Isimone doing his thing in Joplin, Missouri. All you guys are just really, really talented. And, I think, like I said earlier, the more successful you guys all are, the more successful and more recognition the program and the department is going to get. And we're just going to continue to attract high caliber students who work hard and earn the right to kind of call these games and do the play-by-play and do the videos and write. And I'm really excited, and I want nothing more than to remain affiliated in some way with this program, because it's really cool to see, and just to see how far it's come, because obviously 5-6 years ago there was no program, and now we are certainly on the map, and I think we are going to give the Syracuses of the world a run for their money pretty soon.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've gotten. Can you tell us, I just remembered this now, can you tell us the McCourty story? I forget whether it was Jason or Devin, but could you share that story for our audience?
Yeah, so I was on vacation, place I go every year, Anguilla. It's this tiny little 13x3 island, 11 miles west of St. Martin. And I was on vacation with my family, and we went out late at night with my Irish father-in-law, who when he's on holiday, he never wants to go to bed. So we went out, and we were at this crowded place. It was sort of all locals. There was music, and I got tapped on the shoulder. He said, and I turned around, and it was this kind of jacked guy, a little bit taller than me, and a bald head. I was like, "That's Devin McCourty." He was like, "I know you. Where do I know you from?" And I was like, "What's up, man?" I was like, "Yeah, I spoke to your team. I gave the I-Stand presentation, the domestic violence presentation." And he was like, "What's up, man?" And he was there with his girlfriend at the time, who was in medical school at Rutgers. And basically he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "How do you like the island?" I was like, "I've been coming here since grad school," kind of thing. "Have you gotten out much?" And he was like, "Well, we didn't rent a car. We're staying at the Four Seasons, but we didn't rent a car." He was like, "The cabs are so expensive." I was like, "Oh no, you got to rent a car here." So he was like, "Yeah, it's $40 to get back." I was like, "Well, I'll give you a ride back." And he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, we're going right by there." I was like, "Our villa is right past the Four Seasons." He was like, "All right, cool." So he got in our car, and my father-in-law says, I didn't want the holiday to end, even though we were going home. He said, "Keith, make margaritas," because I make a mean margarita. And I was like, "I'll make margaritas when we get home." And Dev said, "Well, I want a margarita." So we ended up coming back to our house, and we went on the roof of our villa, and we drank margaritas until about 5 a.m. And he actually told me, he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to propose to my girlfriend." And on that trip, she became his fiance. Or I don't know if it was that trip or soon thereafter, they ended up getting married and having kids. And we stayed in touch. We met a couple times before the Super Bowl. I would text him, "Good luck." And that's my Devin McCourty story. He was a really good dude. Really, really good dude.
That's so
That's
cool.
unreal.
What the heck? I want to drink margaritas with Devin McCourty.
I was like, "You just signed a $40 million contract and you're worried about a $40 cab ride?" Well,
I was
Have you
thinking
not
that when you were
heard that
saying the
story
story.
before?
I was like, $40. I feel like that's nothing to him.
right. Just a good, down to earth dude. Hey, before we go, I had a question for you guys. And
Yeah.
I've been fascinated by kind of the social media keyboard warriors with the give and takes on this issue. What do you think about Devers?
Ooh, we
Oh my
spent
God,
like
we had a
20 minutes
whole
about that.
show about this.
Oh, you
Basically,
did?
we
All right.
spent. Yeah, but I mean, I'll give quickly my rundown. I think that it comes to a point when you got to do what's best for the team. And I do think I understand both perspectives, because I think that if you're told one thing at your job, like, you're told that you're going to do this, and then you show up and they're like, "No, well, we actually want you to do this." Like, yeah, that might slight you a little bit. And I totally understand that perspective. But I also think that the team is in such a situation where it's like, if they're asking you to play first base, I think you kind of got to play first base. I mean, you got to do what's best for the team. But I mean, he's making a lot of money, and they're paying him that money, first of all, to play third, which he's not even doing. So I guess if they asked him to switch once, that's in his mind is the only amount of times that he's going to switch. So I guess I'll see what those two think, but I'd also be interested to see what you think about it.
We talked a lot about it. Gosh, almost a couple weeks ago now, when the whole thing started. But I mean, the way he's playing at the plate right now, I almost want to keep my mouth shut. The way that he's playing, like he's, if Aaron Judge didn't exist, I would think, and now that Bregman's hurt, that he should be in the running for American League MVP. I think he almost does or leads the league in RBIs right now. At least as of last week, he did for a little bit. But yeah, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We could talk about it all day. The Red Sox have a need at first, even at third now with Bregman hurt, and they're still DHing him. And sorry, I know I'm rambling. I could really go on and on about this, but really, yeah, what it boils down to is just you signed a massive contract with this team, and you're supposed to be able to work with everybody has to be a cohesive unit, and it seems like Breslow, Cora, and Devers are all on separate pages, and there's just there's a real lack of communication here, and it's not a good look for the franchise. If Devers wasn't playing lights out at the plate, I'd probably be a little more upset about it, but I haven't really thought about it as much because Abraham Toro, who's been playing first mostly for us, has been fine at the plate. He's been fine defensively too. He's made a couple really outstanding plays, but because of his name, he doesn't get posted. So yeah, I could talk about it forever, but point is, if Devers isn't hitting 300 right now, then I probably would talk about it way more. And the team's 500 too. So would it really make a difference right now if he wasn't DHing? Probably not. I think we have much better defenders. So I don't know. That's my take. I'll let you guys take it from here.
Yeah, we had Kula on to talk about it, and we all kind of were on the same page about it. We all kind of sound like old heads, like you got to just play the position of your toe, but it's true. His hitting has picked up since then. Unfortunately, it was just in time for me to go and see the Mets lose thanks to a home run by him. But besides the point, one of the things that bothered me the most was that Devers went to the media with something that should have been behind closed doors, and there was a lack of consistency from Bloom and Cora. Granted, they didn't know about the injuries, but if you're a manager, you don't go and make a definitive statement like he's never going to have to play for whatever he said before third base or first base. Cora, remember he made a statement about one of those positions being off the table for Devers. You don't make those statements.
The third's off the table. Yeah.
Yeah. But it just was a PR nightmare, and it really affected the chemistry of the team, which is visible in their stats.
Yeah, talk about a case study in crisis communication, lack of communication, and honestly, a lack of a good personal brand. What a bad teammate. I am so out on Rafi Devers, and he was one of my favorite hitters prior to this season. I didn't realize how selfish of a teammate he was. And, regardless of the lack of communication or the way Breslow and Cora handled it, I just think as a teammate who needs to be accountable, right? And we talk about being a good teammate in our classes, right? You work hard, no excuses, and you're resilient. Being accountable to your teammates is the most important thing, and he's just not.
Yeah.
He doesn't have his teammates back. Bregman goes down. Well, Cassis goes down and he refuses to even consider playing first. Bregman now goes down and Cora says it's off the table for him to play third. Why? I don't understand. I mean, he's not a Gold Glove caliber fielder, but I don't know. I think it definitely has affected the juju of the team and the team chemistry and camaraderie. And I just think teams that don't sacrifice for each other don't win. I don't care how talented they are. And I think, call me crazy, I think they need to move on from him. I know it's going to be tough to move a $35 million a year contract. But I almost think at this point it's addition by subtraction. If I were Craig Breslow, I would move on. I would say, see you later. We'll find somebody else. We'll put it together, because you just need guys that you want to sacrifice for each other, and I hesitate to say go to war with, but that's kind of what it's all about, being accountable to each other. And if one person thinks that they're more important or better than the team, that's a bad look for him and his personal brand, honestly. And if I were a GM, I honestly wouldn't want him on my team. And I certainly wouldn't want him if I were a coach. And I don't care how much talent you have, they're never going to win with him there, I don't think.
I think about
agree.
Mookie Betts and how Mookie would play any position they asked him to.
Playing
Whatever.
shortstop right now. Playing
Yeah,
shortstop.
that's what I'm saying. He literally does. He did anything the team asked him to, and of course we traded him for a bag of chips, because of course. But even people like Dustin Pedroia, that guy was a warrior. He would play through injury. He would do whatever you asked him to do. You know what I mean? And I try and sympathize, but I agree with you to where points like you're a bad teammate for that. You know what I mean? You're letting your team down by not doing what is necessary or needed to help the team win. You're actively probably hurting the team with this. And just to add on what it's doing in the in the clubhouse, it's like it's nothing but a PR nightmare, as you said, like an example of bad crisis communication on his part. Like if you have those issues, even then don't go to the media, and then it won't be such a bit, it won't get blown up so much. And even then, I still think you're a bad teammate, but I don't know. It's a mess. And I've been to 2 Red Sox games in the past couple of weeks, and of course they lost both. It was a miserable experience both times. Spent way too much money just to watch my team lose. It's like I'm getting really sick of the 500 level baseball, and it's really getting to me at this point.
Yeah, they've lost 17 one-run games, and they're just finding new ways to lose, and you can almost sense it. I've been watching almost every inning, and you could just sense it. They get the lead in extra innings, and it's like, all right, leadoff guy gets walked, or they make an error, or they can't turn 2, and it's just you can just feel the loss coming. You can feel the wheels coming off, and they just have bad juju right now. They're playing really bad baseball, and
that's what by the Brewers.
Swept by the Brewers, and I think just the team chemistry and culture is in the tank, and that is not how I would want to run my classroom, my organizations, my internship program. Nobody is better than the team, and you got to put the team first, and that's the only way to have a successful organization. I don't care how talented he is.
They're 464. They're 464 and 464 since the 2018 World Series. I'm not even kidding. They're literally a straight 500 in the amount of time since that World Series. That is so depressing.
And they're a $200 million team.
Exactly.
Talk about mediocre, bro. Yeah, we got one of the highest payrolls, or one of the highest abilities. Like we're a big market team, and then we're out here just standing in mediocrity. I guess injuries don't help, but all the off-field shenanigans and Cora saying Devers is not going to play in the field. It really forces the Red Sox hand. They just called up Marcelo Meyer, who I have been really looking forward to, but he's playing third base and he's batting 4th through 6th. That is a lot of pressure to put on a guy who is one of your top prospects, one of the top prospects in baseball. I absolutely hate calling up these prospects too early, and it's so early for Meyer. He's only had a handful of games. But I think putting Meyer at a position that he is not, he wasn't raised, so to speak, in the farm to play, and then relying on him to put out so many hits for you. Devers not willing to play in the infield now just hurts that. We in my opinion, I think Brian Bayo was called up way too early, and he hasn't been sent back down, and he's been injured, and he's been more than mediocre. He's been borderline awful ever since getting called up. And I think when you rush a player's development, nothing good comes of it. And Devers is not helping that by not willing to go back and playing third base.
Yeah, and I think they envisioned him becoming sort of the next Big Papi, and he is not Big Papi. He's a better hitter. He's probably got more talent than David Ortiz, but he just doesn't have the presence, the commands, the leadership. They are desperately lacking leadership. And I think Bregman, to a certain extent, filled that role as much as he could as a first-year player. I think Story does his best, but it's tough when you're hovering above the Mendoza line, and you can't expect these rookies to be leaders of a team. They haven't done anything yet, and they need their $300 million player to be a leader, and he's just not. And it's sad. It's sad to see, but I think they need to say goodbye. I think they need to part ways, addition by subtraction. That's what I would do.
It's like they're proving your point right that they're not going to win with him because he's playing out of his mind right now. He's having one of his best stretches ever, and they're just hovering because it's such a toxic environment, one that wouldn't be created if he didn't say anything and he just accepted that you need to do what's best for the team.
The internet's not talking about how good Devers is doing offensively right now. He's having probably, like you said, one of the best stretches of his best stretch of this season, maybe one of the best of his career so far. Like, he's batting just sub 300. He's absolutely raking in runs, but it ultimately doesn't matter because all anybody cares about is his willingness to do what the team asks or what the team isn't asking him to do. It's ridiculous. And we talked about it first when the first interview, when he's like, no, I play third, like if there's a language barrier, but it goes way beyond that now. It's much clearer that it's just an unwillingness to bend the knee, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I just watched Forged in Foxborough last night and kind of Vrabel's mindset, and I relate a lot, obviously, to what Vrabel says and the way he's running his organization. And I just think that if Vrabel were the coach of the Red Sox, Raffy would not be there.
I agree.
People are calling for Cora's head. I completely forgot about that.
And I like Cora as a manager, but somebody has bungled this really, really badly. I mean, at the end of the day, I put the majority of the blame on Devers. They should have kept it in-house, but somebody has really bungled this communication, and it is a PR nightmare. Talk about a case study in crisis communication. I wish this was happening during the semester.
I was going to say that. We could have brought that up for 360. We didn't bring up enough crisis communication in that class, I think. But totally. Man, yeah, what a freaking mess. And the Red Sox are 500. So what are you going to do?
Well, I compare it a little bit to the Soto situation, and just the difference in how they've handled it. To contrast it, the Devers situation was entirely fabricated and was not inherent to anything in terms of like what the Red Sox were doing. It was just entirely avoidable. On the other hand, Soto, you kind of saw this coming. A guy gets paid the biggest contract in sports history. If he doesn't play insanely good baseball, there's going to be a storm in the media. So I expected this. He has not been playing his best ball, but I honestly haven't found anything wrong with what he's been saying or doing. Actually, a report just came out today. I'm trying to get the details on it, but that Soto has actually been leading these outfield huddles. You won't hear that in the national media. It's a Mets beat reporter for SNY put it out. But they love to talk about, yes, he should have run out the hit at Yankee Stadium and then the one at Fenway, but I heard a great take about it. It was a former Met, Jerry Blevins said this. He said he thinks Soto is trying so hard to not let the pressure get to him and not try to push himself and like force it, that he's not trying. It looks like he's not trying enough. He's trying to take his foot off that, like forcing it, where he's just like, I'm just going to relax and do my thing, but he's too relaxed. He's not putting in the effort. And all the former big leaguers I've seen talk about it, including your guy Pedro, Kyle, I see you shaking your head, have said, you got to remember this guy's a human. And to see that he's every half inning, he's calling the outfielders together, and the players have been saying they appreciate it. And you see his teammates backing him up, and they say, oh, he doesn't want to be here. If you look at the actual clips, I think he's been doing the right things, and I think he's going to get it together. Am I biased? 100%. But I really think he's going to get it together, and I haven't found a problem with the stuff he's been saying. Do we want to see more effort?
You
yes.
got to run those out, though.
And he has been since.
And here's my problem. And he was always going to be the most heavily scrutinized athlete on the planet because he's the highest paid athlete on the planet. $700 million comes with a lot of eyeballs watching you. And I agree that he's squeezing his bat into sawdust and trying to do too much. But he did not run those two balls out. And then when he get called on it, the lack of accountability is my issue. Just say, you're right. I got to do better. I messed up, own it and move on and then hustle. And, Andrew, as well as I do, it's one thing to talk the talk. It's another to walk the walk. And you can be the rah-rah guy and call all the outfield huddles that you want. But if you're not hustling ground balls out and then not taking accountability in the media, that's where I have the biggest problem with it. You got to show up and give the interviews when you're struggling, not just when you're hitting the walk-off, and you got to own it when you make a mistake. And hey, he made a mistake. He didn't run those balls out. And, you probably could have called out every single player in the major leagues for not running out a ground ball here or there, but not every single guy in the major leagues is making $700 million. He's going to get that kind of scrutiny. So just own it. Be accountable. Yeah, you're right. I should have ran it out. I will do better in the future, and then run out the ones in the future, learn from your mistake, and move on. And I don't think nearly as many people would be giving him the grief that they are if he had just been a little bit more accountable for those mistakes rather than saying, oh, I hustled. What are you talking about? He did not.
That's
hustle.
fair. That was the one comment I didn't love, but I will say this: he has shown more hustle since that happened, and Mendoza did talk to him.
As well, he should. He's making $700 million.
Yeah, but
That's
I'm
what I
just
mean
saying
about
I don't think
leadership.
it's going to be the big issue that they're making it out to be. In terms of the interview thing, I can't even blame him because what happened there is he agreed to do it, and then they told him it would be about Aaron Judge and the Yankees.
You're such a Mets apologist.
I know, but
it's showing bad here.
if you're Soto and you're in the field and they're like, we're gonna ask you now about the Yankees and if you miss it and if you regret it more, when they would been asking him about that all week, are you gonna want to do that while playing?
No, I'm not. But that's what
Fair.
comes along with the $700 million contract.
Yeah,
What I will
don't
say-
know. I think he's gonna figure it out.
I
What
do
I
too.
will say,
I mean, I think he's going to hit. He's going to hit. It's the
Yeah.
hustle. It's the leadership that, it's the brand. It's the character. It's the
he'll get
integrity.
there. He'll get there. It might not even be this year. This is two completely different situations. But my roommate, who is also a Mets fan, we were talking about this, and he's also pretty biased. But I do see his point where when Mike Piazza got to New York, and this is a lot different. I know he's a catcher, which nowadays aren't really known for their offensive prowess. But his first year, he didn't deliver and kind of had similar issues. They were paying him a decent amount of money. He was, one of the best offensive catchers in the entire league, not just, in the NL or anything. So his first year, he was fine, but not the level of best offensive catcher in the league. And then year two with the Mets basically doubles all his stats and has one of his greatest seasons of his career. So is it the pressure of the New York media? Is it, is it something else? The lack of hustle after getting a big contract? Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what we're seeing with Soto is I also saw the same thing with Daniel Jones with the Giants. I know it's completely different situations, different sports, but Daniel Jones worked his ass off.
He's not Daniel Jones.
Got to a playoff game, won a playoff game, and then got a massive contract and fell off the face of the earth. So completely different situation, but kind of similar. I don't know. I think it has to do with the money and the media, and I don't know. He's not hustling, but I think he'll get there. He will fit in, and he will eventually show everybody why he's worth all that money. I do think he will eventually.
You can compare it to Lindor. When Lindor first got there, they wanted his head. I mean, his stats were awful. Soto's aren't great, but Lindor's were terrible. But Lindor, I love Lindor's character. I love him as a leader. I think they need to name him the captain already. So I had more faith in him than even Soto, but Lindor has turned around and he's become the leader of the Mets. And I love Lindor so much. But yeah, again, it was like Piazza where he just wasn't hitting when he got here after the big trade and then the 10-year extension. I think Soto will get it together, but I think Lindor is the real leader of the team. And I think Soto has got to thank God that Lindor is on that team because Lindor is stepping up and taking that leadership role.
What I will say about Soto is he has 700 million reasons to be a leader. So that's all I'll say. If he's stepping up and he's leading the outfield, good for him, man. But you gotta do more. You gotta be more. And his presence at the plate and in the field will reflect upon how he's doing off the field as well.
I think it'll get there. I really do. But this is actually a good time to ask this question. A good way to close it off too. You've talked a lot about failure and the importance of failure and making mistakes. And I mean, it fits with the Soto situation, hits with the Devers situation, but why do you preach so much that failure is the best teacher? And what would you say in any situation? This can apply to all of our listeners here. How do you treat failure?
Yeah, I think failure is a tool to learn from, and I think you learn more from mistakes than you do from successes. You learn more from the losses and the errors and the times that you screw up than, if you knock everything out of the park, then what is there to improve upon and learn from? And, I think we all need to kind of get comfortable with failing a little bit, because you're going to fail until you get good at something, and you need to be willing to face that fear of failure and to fall on your face a little bit to learn how to succeed. And I think that's true in academics, in sports, in life, in job, in everything, and I think we see a lot of that in the exercises that we do in class with the elevator pitch and the leading a class presentations. And people fail, and I think the people who fail at first learn the biggest lessons on how to kind of come back and be better. And I think that's where the true growth happens, when we challenge ourselves to try something new, fail, learn how to do it better, and then kind of overcome those obstacles in life.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, this show certainly was not a failure. This was a great show. We thank you so much, Keith, for coming on and talking to us about so many important topics that I think are relatable, because we have a lot of guests here that they do great things, like Sam Knox, Cam Isimone, and Tim Crane, and Andy Gresh, Taylor Begley, Sophie Phillips. We've had so many great guests here that do amazing things, but with what you gave us today, a lot of it can be applied for really anybody, whether you're in sports or not. So I think this was a great benefit to our listeners here on 321 Media, and for us even just to have those lessons reinforced. And it was great talking to you again. Thank you to CC O'Brien's for sponsoring us again. You should all head on over there, have their beer and their burgers. It's a great hangout. And I want to thank Kyle and Brandon, as always, for co-hosting this with me. It's been a blast, guys, and keep posted on our social medias. We're going to be talking to more guests. Tyler Murray, the broadcaster of the New York Knicks, whenever they're done, hopefully that's soon for us Celtics fans. He will be joining us, and we're going to be talking to more guests. I'm going to try to get a hold of Levesque and DePino and other local athletes and other guests. So there's going to be a lot going on this summer, but thank you to Keith for a fantastic show. That's going to do it for us here on Fiore Calls Game. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great week.
Cheers, boys.
Experience local excellence with Roof Right Roofing in Charlestown, Rhode Island. With over 40 years of unmatched expertise, Roof Right specializes in architectural shingles and holds the prestigious title of GAF Master Elite Installers. Known for their commitment to the community and support for local initiatives, Roof Right is your trusted partner for all of your home's roofing needs. Call today for a free estimate at 401-212-4140.
Hi, this is Dan from Lathrop Insurance. In this challenging insurance environment, Lathrop Insurance can be your beacon in the storm to help you find the coverage you need at the right price. Now, more than ever, you need a partner in the insurance industry that can work with multiple carriers to make sure you have the right coverage at the right price. Lathrop Insurance carries home, auto, and business insurance and can be reached at 401-596-2525. We've been supporting the local community since
Experience local excellence